So a few months ago, I saw this motion graphics made by one of my favorite After Effects creators, and I thought about giving it a try, and that's the Not Video app. And honestly, at first it was a nightmare because I knew I had to work with a lot of layers to get each type of camera movement, and given Not Video's current limit, I knew that was almost impossible. But honestly, I really don't feel like giving up, and I said to myself, why not I create my own fake version?
My name is Kiwi, but some call me the goddess of rain, and others the goddess of fire.
And yep, it's not perfect, but it's also not bad. So right now I'm going to walk you through how I made this from scratch, and I can't guarantee you it's going to be easy, but I will do my best to take each step slowly. So first, I started by importing the sky footage, and you can find all these assets in the video description. Next, I added the gradient layer to create that environment perspective. Then I changed the color too to get that dark shadow ground look. So now I'm going to add the mask and mask out the top of the gradient to make the sky visible. First, I blow out the edges to get that perspective right. Then I adjusted the center and enabled distortion below it. I changed the distortion type to cloud. I then went back to the sky to add that old school film filter to get that black and white look. And with these simple steps, I was able to make the sky look a bit chaotic, to create that dark atmosphere vibe. Next, I added the rock PNG to sit on our current composition. I then switched the transform to 3D to have more control over the angle perspective and the material lighting as well, which is very important for the final result. Over here, I tried to match the camera settings and the position and properly size it with the 3D transform. And with that set up, next I added the cartoon PNG, which is more like the key character for this composition work. So after transforming it to 3D, I then positioned the character on top of the rock. So now I'm going to show you how I animated the breeze effect. First, I added the 3D camera and then I moved the character inside it. And you may have to readjust the size and position as well. And once you've got that set up, go to the effects store and add the wave warp distortion on the 3D camera and not the character. I then switch to the mask menu, and now I'm going to use the pen tool to mask out the precise area I want to add the animation to, which obviously should be around the edges of our dress. I blur out the edges a bit and then I return to the effects menu. I tweak the effect values to make the wave look more natural as it could be. So the cool part about this effect is that you don't really need to go through the stress of adding keyframe just to create the animation because it's already programmed inside the effect. And next, we are also going to apply the wave warp to the character's hair. So I'm going to save the current settings as a preset, then add a new wave warp effect, and then import the save preset. So I then deleted the previous PowerPoint and added a new one, and then follow the same usual process. And just like that, we are good to go. Now I'm going to add the group folder to add the flame effect. So the flame is actually splitted into two parts, which is the highlights and the actual fire. So I'm going to add the screen blend type to remove the black background of both layers. And then add it as well on the group folder. Next, I position the flame right on top of the character's hand. I added the glow effect on the fire layer to add more brightness to the flame look. So now I'm going to show you how to blend the surface of an object with the environment. And first, change the material type to custom. Next, I changed the matte cap to the current texture that matches my creation, and that's more like a touch of flame reflection on one side of the rock. I then adjusted the light direction towards the flame angle, and I changed the color to match the flame color. And lastly, increase the reflection values. And next, I decided to place an additional rock behind the character's back, so I duplicated the current rock. So I was actually trying to avoid working with too many layers, to avoid lag during playback. So I changed the material type back to standard. Then I tiled the rock to get the numbers of rock I felt satisfied with, and then I made the necessary adjustment with the sizing and positioning. I also moved the rock inside the character group to properly position the rock behind her. And lastly, I followed a similar method as the first to blend the rock color with the shadow. Next, I added a tree green screen footage to add more realism to the scene. After adjusting the tree to my desired angle, I added a basic color correction to increase the contrast and make it dark a bit. Lastly, I added a tint to match the tree color with the background atmosphere. Next, I also duplicated the tree and placed it at the right corner, and I duplicated it once again and placed it in between the rocks. And then I added the fire effects to create a scenario of a burning tree. And lastly, I added the saber edge to bring that scenario to life. I first changed the blend mode to blending, and then I tweaked the values and changed the color to get that fire look. To add some spice of realism, change the distortion type to fire, then tweak the distortion settings to get the right amount. Then I added the shape mask to feather the area where the fire effect is not necessarily needed. Next, I added the 3D blowing leaf layer to add more depth to the scene. To give the leaf texture a proper look, I added a leaf PNG inside the camera folder. I moved the leaf image backwards behind the rest of the layer, so this way I could be able to add it as a texture. Then I changed the leaf color to match the atmosphere color as well, and lower the rate to minimize the amount of leaf floating in the air. And with all this set, we are gradually getting close to finalize that epic result. So for the next step, I added a solid layer to create a fake fog look in order to add depth to the foreground below the rock. And then I changed the color to something red in order to make it look more visible. So I adjusted the center and feathered the edges with the blur over and over again until the right look was achieved. So now I'm going to add one of my favorite effects to the scene, and that's the smoke layer. So basically this helped me simulate more realism to the storm and atmosphere when creating that cinematic look. So overall, I tweaked the smoke values and changed its color to properly blend it with the scene. So next, I'm going to completely sell all this dramatic chaos, and to do that, first I added the adjustment layer, and then I went to the nature store to add the rain effect on it. So it's obvious that we need to change the direction of the rain to match the wind direction, and then make some adjustment to the size. So instead of decreasing the intensity, I reduced the blend instead to make it look as natural as it can be. Then finally, I reduced the amount of the lighting flash. And now I switched to the mask mode to properly blend the edges of the rain layer, then enable the distortion option to make it look more realistic. So now let's watch a playback of what we have done so far. So before going to the final phase of this creation, I'm going to make some few adjustments to the rain layer, and that's basically increasing the length of it. Then I adjusted the speed of the wave warp on the dress, and likewise that of the hair as well. And finally, I added contrast filter to the character. And with all this adjustment done, I exported the video and then import it into a new timeline. So here I'm going to do two simple tricks, and the first one is to add keyframe to the scale and position from the beginning of the clip to the end to create a fake camera movement. Then I added a smooth curve to both keyframes. And now to completely sell this illusion, I added a classic shake effect. I reduced the shake and speed intensity, changed the border gap type to mirror, then drop down the additional effect and enable the motion blur option. I lowered the lens value to decrease the blur intensity, and lastly, enable the glow option. And with all that done, here's the final result. So roughly, this tutorial is just a practical example of what Nerd Video is capable of creating. So if you learned something new from this, please give the like, subscribe and share, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.